Viruses. Generally, not something we think of as being friendly, much less as actually being beneficial to us. More likely, viruses are thought of as hooligan particles, running wild throughout our bodies and causing havoc where they go. In many cases, yes they do. But in all cases? Well, not necessarily. In this video, we want to take a closer look at what viruses are, how they function, and whether viruses are an absolute evil or not. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen, you just might learn something today. So, viruses. What exactly are they? How much do we really know about them? And how likely are you to contract one? Should you be concerned if you do contract a virus? And what happens to your body once a virus has decided to check in and make itself comfortable? First of all, viruses are incredibly small, and for the longest time scientists were unable to see them as the proper technology for this simply did not exist. A standard microscope, for example, would be useless and totally inefficient when virus hunting. It was only in 1943 that viruses were glimpsed for the first time due to the invention of the electron microscope. Spherical viruses are typically in the range of 20 to 500 nanometers. To put that into context, here is a 500 nanometer virus particle next to the average diameter of a single strand of human hair. You can see why they are so elusive. However, having developed the technology to more closely study viruses, we have been able to learn a great deal about a multitude of viruses. Although if we are honest with ourselves, in reality what we have come to learn is only the tip of the iceberg. What we do know is that viruses can cause all sorts of afflictions, resulting in diseases that ranges from the common cold to Ebola, HIV, and many more. Now, it is important to state that viruses themselves are, in general, not considered living things, and on their own, they typically cannot survive outside of a host body for more than a couple of hours. They do not contain ribosomes, which means that they cannot produce proteins themselves and reproduce independently. Thus, a host cell is essential for its continued existence. So, what does a virus look like, you might ask? Well, viruses come in many shapes and forms, but they all consist of these basic building blocks. At its center, called the nucleus, is nucleic acid, either in the form of deoxyribonucleic acid, more commonly known as and easier to pronounce DNA, or ribonucleic acid, RNA. Think of this as the genetic blueprint which defines it and determines its actions and functions. Surrounding the nucleic acid, as a protective shell, are proteins. Some viruses are also coated by another layer, which they obtain as they emerge from a host cell. This layer is called an envelope, and it's spiky, which helps it latch onto and enter into other cells. Now that we have looked at what viruses are, let's talk about how we contract them, what they tend to do, and more importantly, how our bodies react in response. Viruses enter the body most commonly through the nose, mouth, eyes, or genitals. They can also enter the body through cuts, direct contact with infected skin or body fluid, or we could get infected through animals or insects. In short, there are many ways to contract a virus. In fact, it is not an uncommon occurrence at all. Viruses are all around us, and many of us will ingest or inhale uncountable viruses on a daily basis. Most of the time, we don't even notice. We are completely unaware of it and continue with our day-to-day routines. However, now and then, we do end up getting sick. When a virus enters your body, this is what happens at the cellular level. The virus moves through your body and attaches to host cells. Once attached, the gullible host cell permits the virus particles entry into the cells. Here, each virus opens up like a Trojan horse, releasing its DNA and RNA, which then hijacks the host cell, causing it to betray you and become slave to the virus. Your host cell now produces copy after copy of the virus, as the copies are pumped out of the host cell's nucleus, which now works as if its life depends on it. The virus copies are again coated in protein for protection before it leaves the host cell to spread to other cells. As the virus leaves the host cell, it often causes damage to its host or even outright destruction. This process is repeated again and again until your body realizes that something is up. Now at this point, we should mention that not every time you are infected by a virus, you end up contracting a disease. The disease manifests once enough host cells are infected and damaged or destroyed, at which point you start to feel a bit, off, and understandably so, given that your body is losing valuable resources as the virus multiplies and multiplies over and again, hijacking your host cells and leaving a trail of destruction and confusion behind it as it progresses. Now, all this sounds absolutely terrifying, and it would be if not for our immune systems. Our immune systems are something marvelous, to say the least. Admittedly, they are not perfect. Very often, the result of feeling unwell is due to what our immune systems are doing in response to the virus infections, and not necessarily due to the viruses themselves. However, it is a small price to pay for all the good they do us in general. The immune system relies on white blood cells, called leukocytes, which originate from our bone marrow. You have thousands and thousands of leukocytes in every microliter of blood. Using an average of 5 liters of blood in a human body, you could easily have as many as 37.5 billion leukocytes, all of which are constantly and tirelessly working to keep you safe and healthy. They patrol your entire body, inspecting organs and tissues, searching for signs of irregularities. It is the antigens carried by the viruses that infect us that alert your immune system and puts it into action. Now keep in mind that the number of different threats to our bodies are enormous. For this reason, your immune system has several different types of white blood cells, each skilled at dealing with a different kind of problem. To keep an entire cleaning crew of each white cell type on permanent standby would be very inefficient and taxing. So instead, your immune system employs several scouts from each type to roam and seek out invaders. When infection has occurred, the relevant white blood cell scouts locate and identifies the antigens of the invaders and signals for backup. Your body then starts producing millions of white blood cells skilled at dealing with this specific invader. At about the same time, based on the information gathered from the encounter with the antigens, your body then starts producing a special type of protein called antibodies. These antibodies circulate the body and latches onto the antigens, capturing them and effectively neutralizing them. And best of all, this aids in generating long-term immunity against this particular virus. Whilst all this is happening in your body, you are probably going to feel somewhat miserable. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, as you are likely to retire to your bed or couch, providing your body with the rest and resources it needs to eradicate the virus. Well done! You haven't consciously done a thing, apart from taking something to alleviate the symptoms, napping, and binge watching your favorite series. But you are now en route to recovery. Like we said earlier, our immune systems are wondrous things. Well, hang on, you say. If our immune systems are so amazing, then why do we get sick at all? Why has humanity experienced such terrible and fatal diseases in the past and still continue to do so even in present day? Take for instance the influenza strain, commonly known as the Spanish flu, which spread rampantly and killed indiscriminately in 1918. It is postulated that about a third of the world's population was infected, and 50 million people, which is considered a conservative number by some, died from the virus. That ranks it among the deadliest virus pandemics in modern history. Compare it to the current virus we are fighting, COVID-19, which has seen about 0.05% of the entire population pass away due to the virus itself and COVID-related complications, and you get a sense of how devastating the Spanish flu was. It takes first place by a long shot. Almost 3% of the world's population died from the 1918 flu. Now keep in mind that the world population was significantly less back then, and the impact was therefore much more fierce than we could possibly imagine today. The fact is that viruses are quite adept at surviving and getting around. Not only do we have to contend with the ease at which viruses are spread, especially given the advances in modern global transport, but viruses can also mutate. This is mostly due to copying errors, and when this happens, our immune systems may find it difficult to deal with. Suddenly, your immune system may not recognize the antigens of the mutated virus, and you find yourself vulnerable to this mutated virus. Once again, it is up to your immune system to jump into action and deal with the threat as best as it can. Unfortunately, at times our immune systems cannot deal with the virus on its own. We won't go into too much detail here, but this is where medication, vaccines and the like come in. Often, the purpose of these are to suppress the virus, simply buying the immune system time enough to deal with it. By now, given a mouthful of the negative side of viruses, you are probably wondering where this so-called need for viruses come in. They only causes trouble, it seems. Well, you see, viruses have been given a bit of a bad rep through some very one-sided publicity. And it is only natural that our focus has mostly been on what poses a threat to us. But as a result, humanity has chosen to focus on a small group of viruses, and therefore our knowledge only extends to the negative side of viruses. You see, everything we have discussed so far relates to only a small group of viruses, those that cause disease in humans, human pathogenic viruses. Let us tell you a bit more about the other side of the coin. The vast majority of viruses, millions of them, are in fact not pathogenic to humans. Those that are, statistically, approaches 0%. Viruses are, as the title of this video says, actually essential to us and our well-being. Viruses play an integral role in entire ecosystems right across our planet. They are essential in maintaining the health of several organisms, ranging from fungi to humans. Our bodies have several defense mechanisms, one of which relies heavily on bacteriophages. Bacteriophages are viruses that infect and destroy specific bacteria. These bacteriophages are found in our mucous membranes, lining our digestive, respiratory, and reproductive tracts. They act as frontline soldiers, battling off unwanted bacteria that are caught in the mucus. Phages have also been used to treat dysentery. Google that one if you dare. Sepsis caused by Staphylococcus aureus and Salmonella infections. Some researchers even say that these viruses might be a possible key to treating infections that are or may become resistant to antibiotics. A lot of research has been focused towards this in recent years and is very much ongoing. This field is called phage therapy. Another great opportunity that exists is the use of viruses to selectively infect and destroy cancerous cells. These are called oncolytic viruses, and the potential here is utterly game-changing. In the words of Professor T. Goldberg, an epidemiologist at the University of Wisconsin, therapeutic viruses act like little microscopic guided missiles that go in and blow up the cells we don't want. Many researchers are hopeful that through the use of viruses, scientists will be able to create the next generation of therapeutics. On a larger scale, and as the last point for this video, we look to the oceans and what role viruses play there. It is interesting to note that by mass, 90% of all living material in the ocean is microbial. Why is this important or even relevant to the discussion today? The microbes in the ocean across our globe produce about half the oxygen on the planet. Quite significant, right? And would you believe it? This process is enabled by none other than viruses. Each and every day, oceanic viruses kill off about 20% of all microbes in the ocean and about half of all oceanic bacteria. Through this quite unfathomable rate of culling, the oceans are littered with the nutrients that plankton need to sustain high rates of photosynthesis, thus producing a massive part of the oxygen required to sustain life on Earth. There you have it in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. We hope that you have gained some insight and hopefully think slightly differently about viruses in the future. Yes, they can be problematic, but on a grander scale, we can only be thankful for the behind-the-scenes role they play in keeping us ticking, at least for the most part. Now, before we end this off, let us leave you with this final thought. Infectious organisms love mosquitoes. Why? Well, because a mosquito sting acts like an express delivery system into a bloodstream. That is why so many life-threatening diseases begin with a mosquito bite. Malaria and yellow fever, for example. We can only be grateful that HIV is not on that list, at least not yet. It is by random luck for us that a mosquito's metabolism will dissolve any HIV it happens to collect. There might come a day, who knows when, where the virus mutates its way around us, and then we may all be in real trouble. Until next time, cheers.